Welcome back to Race Report. 2 words, Max, world champion.
All right, so for y'all who didn't know or have been living under a rock, Kaylee and I were in Las Vegas for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. We were working as pit grid marshals, and it honestly was the coolest experience of my life. And I don't know how I'm supposed to go back to normal life after this. It was quite literally insane. So if you don't know what the pit grid marshals do, we do a bunch of different jobs, but on TV you'll most likely see us at the start of the race standing at each driver on the grid during the formation lap, and then throughout the race and qualifying down the pit wall, and you'll see us like with our little orange vests and hats on. And basically we just watch the pit lane and make sure everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing. We call in unsafe releases, or if teams are doing a pit stop without their helmets on or something like that, and basically just keeping the pit lane safe.
It was definitely a great experience. Lauren's marshaled a couple other races. I did moto for the first time this year, and it was very different, much more pomp and circumstance. The phrase that was kind of thrown around, like, hey, you need to take this serious because this is the quote unquote, pinnacle of motorsports. And it was a great time. I Lots of lovely people and an incredible team. We also worked on the support paddock for the Ferrari Challenge racing, and then for like the hot laps, that's where they're stored, and then the Bugatti laps as well. And honestly, I think Lauren and I agreed. We liked both working pit lane for F1, but also we really loved working the support paddock. It was just a whole different kind of environment. It was a lot less strict in regards to like you have to be, kind of on your P's and Q's. And we had dance parties. We were right at turn 12, and there was a bar right where the cars would go out to go on track. And they were playing music, and we were dancing as we were, lining cars up. It was just a really good time. Definitely recommend anyone, even if, Lauren and I kind of have a unique experience in getting into like marshaling on the pit grid, but to volunteer and be a corner marshal, be a flag marshal, highly recommend it to anyone. It's a great experience.
I have a major axe to grind with Brad Pitt, first of all, and I think we all do.
Gosh.
Dude, I'm gonna go to the movie theater and hate watch this movie.
Brad
Pitt. Okay, so the first night we get there, on Wednesday night, we have to go for the track test, okay?
And it's our longest night. We already know it's going to be our longest night.
So we rock up to the track at 9 to start or whatever we have to do at like 10:30. Okay, so they do like 2 hours of track testing. It's like the safety car, the medical car, blah, blah, blah. That would normally be the end of the night at like 2 in the morning when all this is done. But no, because Brad Pitt has to do his high-speed filming until 3:30 in the morning. So we leave the track at like almost 4 in the morning to get home and shower, and like we're asleep by like 5:30 in the morning to get back up at 11 in the morning to do it all over again the next day.
And mind you, before we got to track, we sat in 2 hours of traffic with our bus because the first 2 days we did not have police escorts when we should have. So we're sitting in Las Vegas, already blocked off traffic, going back, just stop and start.
It's only 2 miles to get there. It took us 2 hours.
That's insane.
And our schedule had like built-in times, like you're going to get to the truck early, you'll have some downtime, you can eat dinner, because they would give us box dinners. We immediately put our stuff down and went on to track. We had no downtime. Lauren and I had grand plans of like, okay, well, when we get to track, we'll have like 2 hours, we'll take a nap, or we'll explore, like we'll get to do all these things. No. Put bags down, put on a second coat, and went out. I've got another haha for Brad Pitt. So one of the days that we were filming, I think this was like the second or third day that they were doing the filming, he comes out in his race suit, mind you. He's got like his race suit on. I don't know. They might have been filming before. Got his coat, his little orange beanie, but his body double is there too. And this is a spoiler for the movie, but I guess if you're an F1 fan, you kind of already know a bunch of spoilers. So we go out. They go out the second gate. They're also, so part of the gates, the marshals control them. So they're the ones who are opening and closing them. You have to ask race control before you open the gate. Like that is, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. That is what you do before it, no matter who they are, you ask race control. Well, Brad Pitt was like, y'all need to open the gates. And we're like, we have to ask race control. Give us 2 seconds.
Hold on.
And then, so they go out there. And mind you, they're not doing this is not a high speed filming. This is just regular filming. And they make this man fall 4 or 5 times repeatedly. So he's just standing there. They roll the safety car back, and then he staggers and then falls on the ground. And then Brad's like, no, do it again. They do it like 3 or 4 times. I'm like, Brad, he's not, doing death defying stunts. You couldn't have done this yourself.
It was his double doing that. It
It
wasn't
was
even
his
him.
double doing it.
Yeah.
No,
His double
he was
was
standing
like-
on the side.
Yeah.
No, I honestly, the only reason that I'm excited for this movie is to go watch it and hate on it the entire time.
I just want to watch and be like, I was there for when Brad's
I
stunt
was there
double
for
couldn't
that.
make it to the medical car in time after he crashed in the Las Vegas
It's-
Grand Prix.
I was gonna ask you to, because like I know that you did the Ferrari challenge, and then you had like the pit kind of grid placement. I know you had like different spots every day, so like walk us through that. Where were you? Who were you
So
spying
Lauren and I
on?
were sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Lauren and I were lucky. We got to be together every day, and I think Tony kind of did that on purpose so we didn't have
Yeah.
to break apart. First day, everyone was just on the wall. I think, is that right? Everyone was out there for the tests
For the track
because we didn't
test,
have
yeah.
we didn't have anything for Ferrari. Second day, we were in the support paddock, in which we think it was sort of Tony favoritism again, because like the purpose of it is to rotate everyone so everyone gets an experience everywhere, which I really
Mhm.
appreciated. Like that was really cool. Not just to be like, okay, because you have seniority, you get to be here. Because you don't, you get to be there. And then for quali, we were assigned garages. So like Lauren, your first day was
I had McLaren.
yeah, and I had Aston Martin specifically. Well, I actually that's a lie. So first for quali, we had like garages because there was less of us. Race day, we had specific garages, so for
Mhm.
specific drivers. So I mean, as you can tell, Aston did not do much during quali. So I
You
was
gotta
just
watch them
kind
work
of
on Lance Stroll's car until the last minute, and then him not put in a fast enough lap to get out of Q1.
I was like, oh, okay, cool. Both Aston's back after Q1. I guess I'll just hang out.
Yeah. Race day, I had Franco Colapinto and Kaylee had K-Mag. So again, we basically just stood in front of those garages and watched for unsafe releases, and we were also like in charge of like looking up at the people on the balcony, making sure no one was like holding their drinks over the edge or like
People
glasses.
repeatedly dropped.
As much as I was having severe FOMO watching Kaylee and Lauren live their Marshall dream life, I will be getting my certs so I can start doing this too, because
Yes, you got
I will
to.
not survive another race not there. But I was abroad. I'm back now. Short and sweet. On to qualifying. How did I feel when I woke up, went through watching all of qualifying, only to find out that George Russell was on pole? I very quickly posted a photo of like, it was everyone that was on like P1 through 3, the like photo that they take of them together, and Carlos' face is just deadpan of like, no lights are on, nobody's home. And I put that on my story and said like me realizing that George Russell is starting on pole. It got great feedback. But George on pole, the Mercedes were looking great, so I can't really fault him there, besides the fact that I think he has serial killer eyes. Carlos, P2. And then our favorite little Frenchman, Pierre Gasly, after a great week in Brazil, qualifies P3. And I'm going to take this to my grave. I am convinced that he qualified well because the Alpine was finally pink. And
Yeah.
actually pink.
Yeah.
Not like whiffs of pink.
It gave
Fully
that
pink.
extra speed.
I am
the
still
pink.
mad that we have not gotten pink camo, but I'm
I
starting
think
to
this would
forgive
have been
them a
the
little bit.
perfect opportunity because it's like desert and
Another
camo.
American race. But so George on pole, Carlos P2, Pierre P3, and then kind of the rest of our top drivers, we're looking at Charles Leclerc starting in P4, Max P5, and Lando P6. I think, honestly, I expected a little bit more from Charles out of this. Max's qualifying position, honestly, pretty good considering the Red Bull circumstances this weekend. And this is a weekend that, really can make or break the championship, the Drivers' Championship. All Max has to do is finish ahead of Lando, and that championship is his. And yes, we all know that this is in the bag for him. Like, I think that's been fairly clear, at least since kind of like Mexico, Brazil, that like Max is going to win. But it's the fact that for this long in the season, there's been a question of, well, what if he doesn't? And I'm just happy about it. I hope next year is everything that happened this season times 10 in terms of like actual competition.
Continuing on with qualifying, some other standouts. We have Yuki absolutely killing it again, qualifying P7, and Hulkenberg also into Q3, qualifying P9. Some Q1 exits that were not so shocking was Checo. They sent him out like in the queue to go out one more time. He was too late. He did not make it past the checkered line in time to do another lap and was starting P15. And then Alex Albon started P17 due to a deleted lap time. There was something else I was going to say about qualifying.
I thought it was funny that Checo had to be rolled back by his team.
That was
and
hilarious.
Mind you, Red Bull is the very first garage, so they're down here. Checo is at the very end, so you just see these little European men sprinting down. They're like
had to push
losing
his car
their radios
backwards all the way down pit lane because Checo didn't make it out in time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh no! So he got all the way to the end,
and the Red Bull mechanics had to push him all the way back. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The whole pit lane.
That's also, I know there was some discourse on whether or not, because I think the first thing that I heard about the Red Bull rear wing was the fact that they were not doing updates, and that's why they had the old wing. But then I heard it was they packed the wrong rear wing, and that's
then
why
they said no, we didn't. But then they started cutting the wing apart.
Yeah.
They packed their Max Verstappen 4-time championship, but they forgot to pack the rear.
All I'll say is, yes, Helmut Marko is a gossip. We know that. But if Helmut Marko is saying, yeah, we brought the wrong rear wing, I believe him.
I believe that man.
Yeah.
I believe that man.
He's a loose lips Lucy.
Yeah.
And then on to Q2. So unfortunately, there was a massive crash with Franco. 50 Gs. He popped right out of the car and was like, I'm okay. How anyone could be okay at 50 Gs, beyond me.
He looked so sad when he like put his hands on the car and just like put his head down.
It was sad because we hear it on the radio before it's
I mean,
I'm sure
screen sometimes we hear it first.
Yeah.
And so it like in our ears it's like, I think that was he our V carb gold or V carb black? I can't remember.
He was Williams gold.
Or Williams, because he's not V-carb. They're both blue. It's fine. And the garages are literally right next to each other. It all blends together. Sorry. Williams, whatever. So they go Williams, black, crash. And then you just like see this mangled hunk of car being rolled back, and the mechanics have it like covered, and they're like,
yeah, they put a body bag on that car,
holding pieces of it as they're like walking.
There was a trash bag full of parts because the marshals were told don't throw the parts away, put them in this bag and hand them to mechanics. They're gonna need all of them because normally they would just throw them away. So the marshals that like met or at that corner and the mechanics met them, they were like, no, put it all in this bag. And so then there was a mechanic running back with a garbage bag full of every little last part. I was like, this is so funny. It's so sad.
Able to watch the camera footage and like it happens, it shows, and you literally see all of the mechanics in the garage like, they're like, I'm pretty sure like I could see like them crying.
We all
like, not again.
Everyone in the pit lane like turned that way to the Williams garage to like see what was going on down there.
We're like, oh, that don't look too good.
I really hope that James Vowles pays for all of their therapy. So on to race day, i.e. race night. Honestly, like I would say that this race was more confusing than it was entertaining to watch. Period. The start was good. It was a great start to watch. And then it just kind of like teetered between like, I'm bored and like, what are they doing? George holds the lead of the race right off of the start. Carlos and Gasly are kind of fighting a little bit, and that gives Charles Leclerc the perfect opportunity to slip right through on the inside of the corner, past both of them, from P4 up to P2. We've talked about this before. Like, I think even last week, Kaylee and I were talking about how, like, pole conversions, and we're like, yeah, but at least Charles Leclerc knows how to start a race.
Mm-hmm.
From whatever position he's in, he is great on a start and he makes up space. He did the same thing in Austin.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of like study materials, watching Charles Leclerc's race starts would be great material for Lando. Because if he could replicate that in the car that he's in, he could have won the championship, no doubt.
Definitely. Well, where I was watching the race from, like I said, I was across from Franco's garage, but I was actually right next to the Williams pit wall. And it took me a couple laps to realize that when I went like this, the person on the other side of the plexiglass was James Vowles. And that kind of gave me a jump scare because I was not ready for that. I was like here's the plexiglass, here's James Vowles. So that was kind of absolutely wild. But I got to watch his screen the whole time, which was interesting to like see what they have on all their little screens. And one of them shows like what lap they're going to pit on. And then when they pit, like what position they should come out in. And I was like, oh, I have all the government secrets here. I should be like, hey guys, Williams is going to pit on lap 18.
You're live tweeting it.
Like, guess what? At whoever wants to know this information. So that was really cool. But so Max has a pretty good first half of the race. It teeters off as the race goes on, but he is able to take P4 from Pierre, and then Charles and George have some major fighting for P1, but George is able to stay ahead and defend off of Leclerc, but there was some very close going into corners where we weren't sure what was going to happen, but annoyingly, Russell drove very well. Then Charles's pace starts to drop off significantly, and all of a sudden George just has this giant gap, and I was like, awesome, great, now George is just going to win this easily, thank you for nothing. But because of that, Carlos and Max are both able to get past him a few laps later on, which kind of starts the whole Ferraris, Max passing each other constantly.
Back to the start of the race, Oscar was noticed for a false start and resulted with a 5-second penalty. It was kind of a gray area. We think that he was pulled up into his grid box a little too far. And then Alonso, for some odd reason, Aston Martin started him on softs. And, I mean, he did make up a few places, but then almost immediately had to pit again. Again, not really sure why Aston thought that would be a good idea, but maybe they were just so exhausted from having to do overtime on Lance's car that they just couldn't plan properly for Fernando.
So that brings us to around lap 10. This is when Max gets himself ahead of Carlos. Charles Leclerc comes in for his first pit stop to swap from his mediums, which are likely worn out and degraded after fighting with George, to hard tires. I know when I was first watching it, I was like, that feels really early. Like, your mediums only lasted you 10 laps. And then Lando pits too. And I'm like, oh, I guess this is going to be the race. Everyone's going to pit all of the time, and I'm not going to know what's happening.
Then we get Pierre on the radio, unfortunately.
That was so sad.
I was so upset.
I know.
He had no power. And it was sad because, I mean, we were all in shock. On the bus home, we were like, Pierre in P3? Like, okay, come on, go for it. And then to see him out so soon into the race was just very like, but hey, he still has caused no damage to the car. And that was some of the predictions that people were making, like, oh, he's going to have damage to his car. One, because people are being like, oh, he's going to mess up. So at least he can walk away knowing that he's the only driver not to cause damage. And then lap 16,
was it
17.
that Lauren sent? The Grosjean curse?
Yeah. Because Grosjean took a photo outside of his garage.
Selfie.
He started
The
a new
French.
curse.
He did. He had to make up for
Nico.
Yeah, Nico. Whatever.
Mercedes.
Cooked.
The Mercedes in the cold, we at the
Do
beginning,
so good.
like right at FP1, we made the prediction like the Mercedes is going to win because what the heck? So it's like, well, it makes sense because in Canada they did well and it was cold, and Silverstone made as well, it was cold. So I was like, they are on something else this weekend. So, and it really showed in the race as well, just the pace that both George and Hamilton had.
Yeah. Then Lewis came on his radio and was commenting on the Ferraris were very fast in the straights, which are true. I mean, Carlos, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't watched the race, Carlos was in P3 at the end. It's like they're fast, but they can't keep pace either.
Yeah, it's that
or
they're
they get
fast
so
on the
caught up in
straights,
team
but
orders.
they can't manage like the tire degradation.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
That car eats tires for breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're too busy
infighting,
griping and complaining about team orders. Really, it's Charles listening to team orders and then complaining about them when they don't go his way because shocker, Ferrari can't make a decision to save their life. And then Carlos being like, I'm going to do whatever I want because one, this is some of my last races in an actually decent car. I don't care. And then he wins because he listens to what he should and not to the tomfoolery Ferrari's telling him.
Yeah, I think Charles Leclerc needs to stop being such a politician. He's
like you're not running for the president of Italy. Like,
yeah,
stop.
You're trying too hard to be like diplomatic in these things, and you need to understand that like this far along in the season, all they care about is that both of you finish the race
and get good points because you're just now trying to fight with McLaren.
They don't care about what order you're in. But then we kind of get to roughly around shortly after the halfway point of the race, the drivers start coming in for their second pit stops, which is what we kind of expected, is that most people are going to need a 2-stop race because, I mean, hard tires are barely holding on for 20 laps. And because you need to change compounds, so that means you need to do at least 2 different types of tires, whether that's most people doing like medium to hard, or if you're Fernando Alonso, soft to hard, I don't know. And then come lap 26, we get a radio message to Alex Albon asking him to retire the car because they're having technical issues. I just think at this point, like, Williams is cursed, and I don't know what they're going to do
because they got rid of
that.
Logan Sargent. So
Logan Sargent put a hex on that.
When they first were rolling Albon in, I didn't hear it over the radio, and I thought that they had rolled Franco in. I was like, well, I'm not surprised. They've held his car together with duct tape. Like, yeah, I guess. And then I saw it on the TV. I was like, oh, that was not Colapinto. I'm actually kind of impressed.
You know, it's actually upsetting stat-wise that I just realized that Alex Albon still hasn't finished a race since Baku.
Yep.
That's so true.
Literally.
It's a rough go of it.
It is.
That actually makes my eyes water because Brazil, that didn't work out. And then now again in Vegas.
I was him, I would quit. I'd be like, I'm not coming to Qatar. I'm not coming to Abu Dhabi. Someone else can race in my place.
Right.
Bring Logan
you
back.
Have to promise me this car will finish a race. Carlos is called to pit the next lap after he was like asking repeatedly, like, I need new tires. I need them. I need to come into the pits. And then as he's getting ready to go and make his pit stop, he is last minute told, nope, stay out one more lap. We're not ready. And gets on the radio and screams at the team, wake up, guys.
It was so good.
And I relate to that. Like, Ferrari, get it together. What in the Italy nonsense is this? Get it together.
They were on their break. They were on their 2-hour lunch break.
They're siestaing? Like, what are you doing?
They're smoking cigarettes.
You know how serious
they
take that?
Top 32, Max and Lewis are out on track fighting, and they come over the radio and tell Max not to lose sight of the goal for the day. And he goes, yeah, I know, I'm doing my race. He's like, whatever, guys. Like, the race, like, our goal is to win, like, and be ahead of Lando, not to win. And he's like, yeah, I'm doing my race. Like, I'm fine. He was so chill about it. And then post that next round of pit stops, both of the Mercs are running P1 and P2, and Lewis is absolutely flying. Lewis is in some other car than everyone else because It was originally between him and George 13 seconds, and by the closest that he closed the gap to was about 5 seconds in the end. If there was a couple extra laps, because then Lewis started slowing down when he realized he wasn't going to catch George, and kind of let his tires breathe so he could defend if needed against Carlos. But if there was a couple extra laps, I have no doubt that Lewis would have caught up with George, because it was Lewis Hamilton fastest lap, Lewis Hamilton fastest lap, Lewis Hamilton fastest lap, and George wasn't getting any faster. And I was like, this is actually wild. Not only has he made his way all the way up from P10 to P2, but is absolutely flying around the track right now. So I was very, very impressed with his pace the entire race.
I mean, goes to show he's a 7-time world champion. Like, people need to remember that.
I know. Well, it was like really a big suck it to Toto with like how well he did in that race. Of like Toto being like, oh, everyone has a shelf life that includes the drivers, and Lewis is like, shelf life who? P10 to P2, and I almost caught up with George and got like fastest lap after fastest lap. Yeah, let me just remind you who I am, Mr. Sir Lewis Hamilton. So that was very slay of Lewis. Then the Ferraris start finally picking up the pace again on their new hard tires and gaining on Max. And then he asks the team if they want him to try and defend. And they're like, yeah, like that might be a good idea to do that. But, you know, whatever at this point. They really were both over it. And they're like, basically, as long as Lando doesn't catch you, you're okay.
And then on to lap like 41 through 48, Sainz gets past Max, which ultimately he's able to, you know, keep up with the Mercs and stay there. And George is kind of told over the radio, like, hey, you need to, you know, don't sit on your hands kind of situation. Like, you need to keep the 5 seconds between you and Lewis if you want to win. Charles gets past Max for a P4, and then Lando comes in last minute and pits for new soft so that he can get the fastest lap bonus, which makes sense. Like, I think at that point, like, you're 2 laps from end of race. You've made peace with yourself, hopefully, that you're not going to win it. Like, that's okay. Try again next year. But you're still in fighting with the Ferraris for constructorship. So, you know, you got to take a win where you can take it.
For sure. And kind of closing in more on the sibling rivalry happening at Ferrari now that it's nearing its expiration date.
Tell him in Spanish.
I'm dead. Team orders were given. And the team orders being that Carlos was told not to put pressure on Charles during the race. Carlos says, I don't really care what you have to say, I'm going to do it anyway. And at the end of the race...
And that is why he was in 3, and Charles was in 4.
At the end of the race, Charles absolutely loses his shit on the radio because he's now missed out on a podium. And
he didn't realize his radio was still on.
He had no idea that his radio was still on, and it was the like, it's always like this, it's always like this, I do what you ask me to, and look at the return that I get. And like Kaylee said at one point on the radio, like, they're like, well, we told him not to do this, and he's like, well, tell him in Spanish, maybe.
He's a little whiny little titty baby.
His rant at the end, I'm sorry, then his rant at the end of the race, him not realizing the radio was still on, and the engineer being like, shut up, your radio's
Fred
on.
getting on.
Yeah.
The fact that Fred literally had to get on the radio
like,
and
shut
be like,
up.
Charles, enough.
Your radio is on, buddy.
If this is something that's been happening like consistently, and it's like, I mean, he's literally Ferrari's like kicked puppy, that they were like, we love you so much, but we're going to abuse you a lot. I could see
I show my love through pain.
To this point where he's like, I'm so sick and tired of like, you guys ask me to be like a good role model for this team and like listen to team orders and like do everything for the good of the team. But like, I never get a return on it, and I'm sick and tired of it. And then them be like, you should probably not say this out loud so that other people hear it. I would have left my radio on purpose if I were him.
Yeah.
What I take issue with is this has been a consistent and reoccurring theme throughout the entire season of where Carlos is like, hey, I know my car better. You're not going to prioritize me, so I'm going to prioritize myself. And then Charles comes over here and whines and complains and moans, going, "Oh, well, why did he listen?" Well, he's not going to do it because Ferrari's going to prioritize him, and he's not going to be here next year. Of course, he's going to put him first. If he's not going to adapt to you, you have to adapt to him.
Right.
Stop listening to team orders, and if Carlos puts pressure on you, put pressure back on him. Crash.
Do what you did
Take
in
him
Austin.
out. Then you both can't win.
Honestly, that would have been wild. So I see both sides of it. I understand that like the gap between Leclerc and Lando can be closed before this season ends. And so I understand that like to Charles like, well, I should be prioritized because I'm further up.
He just wants his Christmas bonus.
That
of becoming P2 driver standings.
But I think I also see the fact that like to Ferrari, either way, whatever order they finish in, points are points. So Carlos having nothing to lose and going apeshit on track, I can't blame him for either, especially when he's stuck in a Williams next year and has seen that Alex Albon hasn't finished a race since Baku.
Yeah.
I'd be looking at that and being like, ooh.
If there's another chance for me to stand on that podium, I'm going to take that chance for me to stand on that podium before I don't have a car that works.
Especially with all the rumors that are going around about like Franco Colapinto having a seat. Is he going to have one? And like, oh, is Red Bull going to buy Carlos out of his Williams contract? Like, he's trying to make himself visible. And I get it.
My issue with it is Charles gets on and bemoans it so much. And I'm like, at this point, you know it's coming. You know it's going to happen.
It's like you're expecting a different outcome all of a sudden now. Why?
That is the definition of insanity.
Though, like, I don't think Carlos is at fault. I don't necessarily think Charles is at fault for like being mad. Like, be mad. You should be mad.
Yeah, it's taken him way too long to get mad. That's the ridiculous part.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it's kind of like what we were having earlier on in the season with like McLaren and Papaya rules. It's the fact that like Ferrari they're being really like loosey-goosey on everything, and like they're not they're not taking accountability, and it's like we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. And it's like, so if after all of this they have a private meeting with Charles and say like, you're predestined, we love you, we're going to support you, and then this happens again, I could see being like, well, why am I even here? Like, if you guys just like don't actually care at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 80,000 times. Charles, let's get with the program and do something.
Yeah.
I think, if anything, this is absolutely going to signal to him that next year, when he is teammates with the Sir Lewis Hamilton 7-time world driver champion, that team orders at some point are going to have to start being disregarded the way that he did when he was racing against Seb in like Monza.
Yeah.
Like, he needs to go take some night classes at the University of Monaco.
He needs to at some point just say,
literally,
my car, taken him, my rules.
It's taken him way too long. And if he thinks he has any chance against Lewis next season by listening to what the team has to say and following orders and standing by and thinking that Lewis is going to do the same in return for him, Lewis is not going to do the same in return for him. Lewis is out here switching teams to win another championship, to win races. They're not going to be like, oh, Mr. Sir Lewis Hamilton, will you let little baby Charles by? Because he feels like he needs to be let through. No.
Ferrari, in case you didn't remember, we do love you. You are our favorite team.
But you're just so difficult to love.
Well, on to our podium. As we've talked about a couple times, we had George P1, Lewis P2, and Carlos P3, and Hamilton won Driver of the Day, which was well-deserved. The remainder of our top 10 was Leclerc, and then Verstappen, Lando, Oscar, Hulkenberg got some points, Yuki got some points, and then Checo rounded out and got a point. Yay,
Boo.
You did it,
Woo,
Checo. You got
Checo.
a point. The podium for this race was at the Bellagio, not at the actual track, and the amount of the fancy people with their VIP passes that came and asked me, where's the podium? It's not here, sir. And I'm so sorry about it. There's nothing I can do to help you with that one. It is over there at the Bellagio.
And they're like, so we can't go to it? And I'm like,
it's like,
well, if you have teleportation powers that you haven't informed me of, yeah, sure, I guess.
Sure,
but
but
seeing as it's taking place on TV in this moment,
as we speak,
no.
like, you're not getting there anytime soon. So they had these Rolls Royces that picked up the top 3 drivers and then Max. So P1, P2, and P3 were all squished again together like they were last year in their car going. And we have Lewis like with his head out the window and like George just like with the stupidest smile on his face, and then Carlos just like
Carlos knowing that like I'm gonna get back to my driver's room and we're gonna have a meeting and I'm gonna get yelled at and I don't really care.
He's like, I don't really care, I'm gonna get drunk. And then we have Max with
GP.
And they're
and Max
just
just
vibing.
pressing all the buttons and being like, oh, what does this do? What does that do? And he's like, la di da. So the podium, it was kind of sad that we didn't get to see it IRL, but we got to see all the fireworks from the Bellagio, so that was very cool.
Mhm.
And they did play it on the screen, so we got to watch that. My favorite moment was Lewis just like spraying the champagne on George. I thought that was really cute.
Mm-hmm.
So we got Max won his 4th world championship. It was very cool to be there to like witness that. It was cool to watch the whole Red Bull garage doing their celebrations, all changing into their like Max 4-time championship like shirts.
So
it was insane, and the fact that the constructors battle is probably going to go to the very end is also wild. But we have the driver's title all tied up. Good for Max, number 4.
Watching it and seeing, like, I knew Max was going to win when Lando came in and pit for his softs. I was like, okay. I was smiling so hard looking up at that screen, like, ear to ear. I was like, bouncing on the balls of my feet, mostly maybe a little bit because I was cold and my legs hurt. But I was like, Max is going to win, and I get to watch that live. I'm sorry, Julia. I'm not trying to rub salt in the wound, but, like, I'm happy.
You did. You immediately sent me like Lando eliminated.
I didn't say that. Lauren sent that.
And the one where it says 4-time champion and it's with the 4 of Lando's.
I sent it, but she influenced me. It was a joint effort.
It was
No,
so good.
it's okay. I'm honestly kind of glad that Twitter spoiled it for me and I just saw like 4 times and I was like, okay, cool, Max won the championship, like whatever, I don't care. I don't have to feel like annoyed about it anymore. I knew that I had a feeling it was going to happen. Honestly, I think for the remainder of Lando's season, this is the best case scenario. I think actually Max winning is like better for him. He looked so happy after the race.
He was thrilled.
Other funny, silly stuff, because honestly, I think it's what best sums up literally all of these bullet points.
Yeah.
Is that it's funny, and it's silly.
So before the race even started, our new race director littered on the track, got out of the race control car, stuck his hand under the fence, and dropped trash. Starting off real strong. Good on him, I guess. Let's litter and make the planet die. It's fine. Pierre is the only driver to not have caused the team any damage to his car, and he has remained that, so good for him. And then Ocon coming into the pit lane, and they weren't ready for him. And this was not the scenario of like Sainz where he's like, I need to come in. This was, Ocon, we're ready for you, come in. And then there was one person out there. And so he had to drive around again. And then Checo has as many Q1 exits this season as Max has had in his entire career.
8-year
So
career.
at least he's breaking records.
I say that this is funny or silly. It's actually more just like really gross. Leading into the weekend, Checo's dad really should stop talking to the press because he did this in like Mexico where he's like, my son's gonna be a world champion. We were all like, what crack are you smoking? But
What rock
Checo's
have you been
dad
living under?
deciding to say like really, really homophobic stuff about Rolf Schumacher is just like actually deplorable and disgusting. And I don't think that someone's like journalistic expertise or race expertise has anything to do with their sexuality. And I think that you should just like mind your business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And continuing on things that Checo has ruined this year, he is likely to be the reason that certain Red Bull employees will not be getting bonuses because his point performance has been so bad, and there is a over 200-point gap between him and Max Verstappen, even though he is driving one of the top cars on the grid. and he is getting beaten by a Visa Cash App, buy one, get one free, week in, week out. Moving on to one of our other most difficult people on the grid.
Our most favorite drivers.
Lance Stroll, similar to Esteban Ocon, I remember seeing him kind of coming into the pit and being like, why does it look like no one's ready for him to come into the pit? That would actually happen to be because after lap 1, Lance had no radio for the entire race.
He was apparently trying to do anything to signal to his mechanic or like to the engineers that he was coming in, and I would love to know what that was. Like, was he like moving his car, like dancing on the track, be like, I'm coming in?
Was he sticking his hand out the top going?
Yeah, what was he doing? Was he going like this? So we've talked about this a little bit, but Red Bull allegedly may be bringing the wrong wing, and regardless if they brought the wrong one or the right one, they still like cut it up. So don't really know what they were doing with that. But that was a funny little moment. And then finally, they have been listening to our pleas, and they have let Andretti Cadillac
Trojan horse
in, which is basically Andretti. They're going to use Andretti's Silverstone facility. Mario Andretti is like the racing director. He's really just a figurehead. He's not going to actually be doing anything, but it's just to be like, this is Andretti, but it's going to be called. Is it going to be called Cadillac F1 or General Motors?
It's Cadillac F1.
Cadillac F1.
But it's GM Cadillac.
Okay.
Like General Motors will then eventually become an engine supplier as well.
Yes. So that is very exciting.
And then Andretti will worm their way in, and it'll all be good.
So they
and
will.
Colton Herta will get a seat.
Please. They are approved to be on the grid in 2026. And so that means we will have 11 teams and 22 drivers, which is what I've been wanting forever, because this is what we used to have. And they took it away from me, and it is now back. And probably one of my favorite moments of the whole weekend was Yuki coming out of the pit lane and just having lots of trouble in general coming out of the pit lane, where Caley had to call an unsafe release on him. He should have gotten a penalty for that. He did not.
Ocon out. Like, Ocon was already on the pit lane. He literally could not go anywhere. He was past his garage. And Yuki comes tearing out. And the V-car cars both had a lot of fishtailing coming out of their garage. Both of them almost hit some mechanics. And literally has to swerve back into, was it stake that was next to them?
Yeah.
I think it was, right?
Swerve
like almost into the stake. And then comes back out and it's like this close to hitting Ocon.
Yeah.
And then still takes out the sign.
Hits the pit lane speed limit sign. And then we were all on the radio. One of the marshal goes on the radio, and they're like, so Yuki just took out the speed limit sign. Are we cleared to run and grab that? Because it's kind of in the middle of pit lane. And they're like, yes, you can go. So the next thing you just see two like marshals like running, grabbing the broken pit lane speed limit sign and coming back. And then Yuki being interviewed about it after the race and being like, I shit my pants.
Brown flag,
Yuki,
brown flag.
It's our favorite part of the week. Brat and Ick.
Brat and Ick. So Lisa Clark, also known as Racer.mom on Instagram, she races for the Ferrari Challenge, one of their divisions. And she got first place on the first race. And she's walking by, and Lauren and I had kind of left our spots already because we were like done with our zones. And we start clapping for her. And we're like, go, congratulations. And she literally runs over to us and is like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, can I get a picture with you ladies? And we were like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then the girl that she was with goes, a picture? And she makes that exact face. And I'm like, okay, I know my hair is not the cutest from my large helmet that I've had on the entire race, but brutal. And then Lisa goes, well, yeah, because women in motorsports, so we need more of you guys here. And literally, like, those were the sweetest words ever.
Day.
Lisa, if you ever see this, we love you. You have lifelong fans.
My brat this week, really kind of living out the energy of what being a brat is, being bratty, would be Charlotte Claire on his radio. If this is Kaylee's mom listening, mute me right now. Bitchin'. Because I live for it. Max as well for another Slay of a World Championship win. Man, really just like the energy that he gives is everything because it's so little. He's like, I won.
Yay.
Yay!
I want to go home and see my cats, and like that's it.
Yeah.
And I live for that, and I love him, and I'm happy for him. But I hope he doesn't win next year. Sorry, Max.
So my brat is my brat is also Max, but specifically Max post-race interviews drinking his gin tonics. First off, he started with beer. He ran out of beer. Then he proceeds to say that because he ran out of beer, he now has a gin tonic in his, he calls them gin tonics, not gin and tonics, in his little like Yeti thing that he's drinking. And then flash forward to a bit later on, he has his Yeti and a glass of gin and tonic. So he's fully double fisting gin and tonics. And I'm like, you haven't left the track yet. How many drinks are we deep at this point? But yeah, Max drunk post-race interviews, iconic, love it. Now, moving on to our icks. This really has absolutely nothing to do with Vegas, but I am mad. So it came out today that Jack Doohan, who we had championed, we were all for this guy, has chose number
Cheering
7.
him on to the beginning.
Yeah, Caley was like, bring Jack into F1, he deserves a seat. It was announced that he has chosen his race number for next year, and he has chose number 7. And he instantly has tumbled to the bottom of my favorite driver list for next year. So we know how Ocon was
Below
last.
Ocon.
Get excited, Ocon, you're now 19th, because Jack Doohan, you have won P20 in the spot of driver how much I like you. Because you took that number from Kimi Räikkönen, and I will never forgive you. And that's all I have to say.
No.
You really are going to have to work hard to earn me back as a fan, because don't like you anymore.
You've fallen so far.
You are dead to me. Sorry.
My ick is also Jack Doohan. Like, sir, if you ever listen to these podcasts from the beginning, I kind of sided with you over Liam Lawson. Very controversial.
Fact.
And then you're going to go and take my favorite driver and one of Lauren's favorite drivers' number, which should have been retired already because you can't top Kimi Räikkönen. I'm sorry. That's not possible. That's not in your cards. You did not come out of the womb able to top him. And then you're going to choose his number?
Yeah, my ick, once again, George Russell, because watching him on a podium ceremony actually makes me violently ill. If you didn't watch this podium ceremony, feel free to enjoy everyone else looking like a normal human, and George is jumping up and down like he's on a pogo stick with his trophy.
Another brat I'll give to myself and Caley is somehow getting into the club for free, partying with George Russell, and somehow getting our entire group of 12 people, who most of them were guys, also into the club with us for free by saying that we were with F1 race operations, and they just let us in. Very impressed, though, that we rallied and went out, because if we had not gone out and everyone else went out,
You would have been.
We
I would have
felt
not. I would have been depressed. Like going to Vegas and then not going out after when everyone else
I just slept better. I would have felt better. But I would have been.
I would have really regretted it.
Especially when you found out that like George Russell was in the club. You would have been like,
see, I'm more starstruck by Zach Braff and Donald Faison than I am.
But like to party with the race winner is kind of
pretty
like,
sick.
Pretty sick.
It is. It is pretty. Well,
Like even if the race winner was Ocon,
it was George
like,
Russell, but
it's like pretty
Did you see
cool.
any of the other F1 goalies? There were so many of them there.
We met Zoe in
the club. We made it onto
Access.
her
In the
Instagram.
club.
Yeah,
Because
we did.
like Caitlin was there.
We did not see Caitlin.
None of
Barista
them.
Josh
We
was
saw
there.
Madeline.
We saw Madeline, but none of
Madeline.
those other girls had like Paddock Club, and so everyone else we
Yeah.
saw doing like the pit lane tours and stuff were all Paddock Club people. So I saw Gordon Ramsay, I saw Paris Hilton, saw all of those folks.
Nicholas Holt.
Yeah.
Sean White.
He was doing.
Sean
and
White.
I didn't see
so
Nina,
he was
but
there with Nina then.
it was
Yeah.
so cute. He wasn't with Nina. He was with one of his friends, but he stopped right in front of the Aston Martin garage, and he wants to get a picture there, and he goes, and it's just like the most sweet, genuine. It's not like a pose, like a
Like he
Like
was
how
just
men
so
normally do.
excited.
Like
It was just
actually
like
kind of a fan. They've gone to a few races.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I bet
And they're friends
Scotty
with
got him
Lewis,
into
so.
it. That would make sense too.
It was just very like, it was sweet and wholesome to see like someone who's literally a gold medalist.
Being a
And-
fangirl.
Yeah, being like a genuine fangirl. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's so
A
sweet.
public service announcement. Professional athletes can also be fangirls.
Yes.
Yep. There was
You're
a couple
never
I
too
saw.
old. Or cool to fangirl.
Noah Lyles, he was there with Ferrari, the track and field guy who won the gold in Paris.
Yeah. That
I saw
weird
Martin
chef guy.
Garrix.
Well, he's not weird,
Martin
but
Garrix is very
the chef
short.
guy from TikTok who's the Italian one that yells at you.
Why was he
I don't know
giving out
why
the
he was
pole
giving out the
position
tire.
award? I don't...
Sir,
like, have Gordon Ramsay
give it to me.
out. What
I
the
know.
heck?
Let me give it out.
I know. I saw Steve Aoki.
Yeah. Dude, he did like a thing with Red Bull or something or Ford Performance where he was trying to see if he could like cake a mannequin in a moving car. Sick. Damn.
Saw Brad Pitt.
Sounds fun. I don't know if
Brad
Vegas
Pitt.
is like the place for me.
I would never, ever go as a spectator. I will work the race every year.
Yeah. But like I wouldn't turn down the opportunity if it was given.
If someone was like,
if someone
hey,
gave me hospitality, I would do it. But
if
to
I wouldn't
pay
just
grandstand
go as a
tickets,
fan.
no.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Not for me.
And we basically lived at the track. Like, first day we got to walk around, we got to sightsee, we got to do everything that we wanted to do. But like after that, because you're out so late, you use every opportunity to sleep, and then you have to get up so early they provided us lunch, but during those lunches you're basically having like marshal meetings. So it's not like you can opt out for the lunch and then just, we'll walk up to the bus at 2 to go to the track. So like most of your day is consumed with pre-grid work and then being at the grid for the other races that they had there, and then being there until like all the races done, and then you rinse and repeat.
Damn, it must have been such a weird, like, different feeling, like, after, like, just doing Austin as, like, a fan, and then, like, having to, like, turn your brain off and go the opposite way and be like, oh, I'm doing manual labor.
Because, like, I've worked MotoGP twice and I did WEC, but, like, it was just so different doing it for F1 because I'm such a big fan of F1, so I'm, like, I'm working, but I'm also, like, geeking out because I'm standing right here and the car is right here. And there's this tiny little piece of metal separating us, and I could just do that if I wanted to. And James Vowles is right here. And Zach Brown is right here. Like, what is happening to me? And, like, I'm watching Lando get into his car in qualifying to go out on track. Like, what in the world?
Mm-hmm.
See, I wouldn't have been able to, like, resist the urge to, like, yap with these people. I'd be like, I know that you're working, and I'm also working, but, like, tell me everything.
I, like, wanted to talk to James Vowles so badly. I would have been like, hey, what does that screen mean? What is that data? All right, are we gonna wrap it up?
Should we close it out? Should we close it out with a Kiki I or a Kiki Ra?
Ra Kiki.
Kiki
I.
Kiki Ra. Real athlete sweat. Simply lovely.
Simply lovely. Oh, 2 words. What took you so long, Max? 2 words. Las Vegas. We love you. Good night. Everyone hold hands and celebrate that Max is a 4-time world champion. Because it is. And we can all say it together. Simply lovely.